With so much of our everyday life now happening online, when something goes wrong, it can prove to be a total nightmare. Well, today was one of those days for millions of people around the world. A widespread internet outage brought down thousands of websites and popular apps like Snapchat and Reddit and disrupted businesses. Amazon Web Services says it has now fixed the underlying problem and says it's seeing early signs of recovery. AWS provides cloud computing services for companies, governments and apps around the world. Well, Professor Nishanth is Director of Research in Computer Science at the University of Surrey in the UK. He studies digital infrastructure and the risks of our growing dependence on cloud services. Welcome to DW, Professor. Could you explain to us non-computer scientists what went wrong today?
It looks like a complex issue that started around about just after midnight in Pacific Standard Time. Essentially, there's a issue in the U.S. East data centers of Amazon, which is pretty critical. It's one of the default data centers that you get assigned to. And also, there's a critical dependency on the U.S. East data centers for many different services that Amazon is using. And because that failed, everything else failed. So there was like a knock-on effect from there, causing a number of different services to fail.
So how does, because I'm not a computer scientist, and even I get that this is weird, that a disruption in one US region, like AWS's US East 1, how does that disruption in one region ripple out to affect banks and telecoms and government services around the other side of the world?
So we've been building increasingly sophisticated digital infrastructure, and this infrastructure is blocks built upon blocks, built upon blocks, built upon blocks. And so you don't know when something unravels fairly deep down in that infrastructure. That could take down a whole bunch of other things that are kind of dependent on that, right? So essentially, that seems to be what has happened. Amazon is engineered for high availability. And the reason why we don't see this more often is simply because they've done such excellent engineering. But when things go wrong, things go wrong. And you can see the effect of that. Because a large number of companies are actually relying on Amazon and the kind of availability and the kind of service that they've been giving for so long. And so when that goes wrong, everybody that's relying on them then fails. And then as consumers, end consumers can see the effect of that in the vast range of digital services we're using.
Europe has long debated what they call digital sovereignty. Does this outage strengthen the case for building more homegrown cloud infrastructure?
So to a large extent, digital sovereignty is different from having to create a completely different infrastructure from something like Amazon. Amazon does have availability and does have data centers here in Europe, for example, in Ireland and many other different places. So that you can achieve digital sovereignty by placing your data, by placing your virtual machines in those regions. So what has happened in this case is that you could have a very complex infrastructure, such as a bank, which has services that it depends on, and those services depend on other services and so forth. So it's like it's not this first party that end consumer, a European end consumer is dealing with, but perhaps a second party or a third party that is relied upon by the banks and other digital infrastructure that could have a component that is running in one of the affected places, such as in this case, the US East. So what we need really is more stringent audits to see what are these digital dependencies and to kind of make sure that these digital dependencies are known, understood, and furthermore, just having one data center in Europe is not going to make this kind of problem go away, right? So it could have been that the Ireland data center goes down, in which case it doesn't matter whether it was in US or whether it was in Ireland. When it goes down, it takes down the whole service with it.
Okay,
what you need, and the only way we know how to deal with it is redundancy and resilience.
Yes. So who does that? Who does that audit? Is that something that, well, we presume that the companies are doing it, but should that also be something that legislators are enforcing? Should there be a sort of standard that these systems have to meet?
There are various standards that systems have to meet, and it all depends on how deep down the audits end up going. In this case, it might have been that some infrastructures, because they are so complex, we are not able to unravel all the different layers and all the different dependencies that you have. So it's inevitable that there will be failures in complex infrastructures. We are providing incredibly sophisticated services to our citizens these days. So once in a while, these kind of issues happen.
And should legislators now consider cloud services like AWS? Should they be considered critical infrastructure comparable to electricity or water, and then
Absolutely.
regulate them accordingly?
Absolutely. So in this case, for example, if Amazon Ring failed or Venmo failed or a bank failed, I might not be able to undertake critical transactions. So Amazon is absolutely a critical infrastructure that needs to be treated as such and protected as such. So there needs to be a lot more process that needs to be introduced to make sure that things like this don't happen. It's a very rare event, but we should make sure it doesn't happen again.
Thanks for talking us through that, Professor. Professor Nishanth Sastry from the University of Surrey.